Hello, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. This is Psych Soup, which is the research side of all the work I do. I have this is what I have figured out, and this is what I can provide to you for healing. And then I have okay, this is the stuff I haven't figured out, and I just need to do some exploratory dialogue, either journaling or speaking, to figure shit out. And this is literally, this is where I tap into my philosophy. Just a moment. Lizzie? No. Thank you. Can you turn the light on, please? um, this is where um, the I just need to dig my hands in and explore and figure stuff out. So I basically had a massive perspective shift this morning. And what I love about perspective shifts is when you uncover and when you shake things up, things surface. It's beautiful. It's like you've got this lobster cage at the bottom of the ocean, and you know it's there, and you keep rattling it, shaking it, pulling it, and finally it breaks loose and it floats to the top. But then when it floats to the top, it uncovers a bigger treasure. It uncovers a chest, and you end up getting a lot more than you bargained for. And that surfaces, and suddenly you're looking at it going, oh, wow, I have a lot here it's a lot. So that all being said, what I have here is I had a lot of little perspective shifts that occurred over the last few weeks, and it's been unblocking things and unblocking things, which have been fantastic. But then what ended up happening at this one particular point this morning is and I'm huge on pulling out chakra stones and using my amethysts, or, well, this isn't amethyst, but using whatever I can get my hands on to feel myself balanced. And I realized this morning that there's nothing wrong with my energy and my alignment. I'm codependent, and I'm furious because and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is where I get right down to it. Psychology field fucking sucks. It really does. There's the whole thing, first of all, and yeah, I'm going to rant for a bit on how much I hate the psychology field. And I'm not the only one. Like 50% of people who go into psychology go, wow, you guys are absolutely fucking this up, and they abandon it. There's a lot of psychologists who say, I'm going to do my own practice because you guys suck. Basically what happened is, up until Freud, everything was done philosophically. Psychology was actually a branch of philosophy, which is how I found psychology. As I was studying philosophy, when Carl Jung's name popped up, I was actually doing theological studies under morals and ethics in philosophy when I saw Carl Jung often referenced, and I loved the work he did with theology. So I dug into Carl Jung to learn more, and I found out he was a psychologist. I think he was a student of Freud or something like that. Now, everyone knows Freud. But I want to point out here something to you. These guys were philosophers, and some of them were doctors or lawyers, but they were philosophers. They were thinkers. And psychology is very much an abstract thing. There's no tools that can sit down and measure the subconscious mind. It's all theoretical, abstract hypothesis. But the problem is the government needed to regulate this at some point. And first it came into the field and there's a laughing stock. There was other people who were like, wow, this is so innovative and new, and this is curious. It's philosophy. You could argue what's right and what's wrong all day long, but at the end of the day, it's an opinion because it's philosophy. But at some point, they felt they needed to regulate this. And the only example they had available to them was the medical field. Now, medical field is hardcore data science. You can pull instruments, you can measure, and it's a one size fits all. You see a problem with the heart, you can tell it's a clogged artery. You know that the person needs to have their arteries replaced or whatever. Now you're looking at a triple bypass or a singular bypass. Like this is science. And somebody came along at some point and it was decided that the psychology field should be modeled after the medical field. And I think that is where they really fucked up psychology. Because then they started putting certificates on it. Then they started saying, well, if you don't have a degree, and then they started deitizing the fathers of psychology. And everybody who came thereafter with a degree, oh, well, now you're deitized and you're going to be held to the standard. And it's like bullshit. At the end of the day, this is philosophy. And we're all arguing over our own perspective. So, and then instead, basically with psychology, there's people coming along with these philosophical theories, And the psychology field is stamping, oh, this is approved, this is approved, this is approved. Excuse you. There is no lab that exists for you to test this bullshit. Yes, you can run tests, but it's all hypothetical. What are you doing? And then they start coming up with concepts that, oh, you need to be certified. You can't practice therapy without a license. Fucking bullshit, you can't. We're called life coaches. So now they've regulated it. And I'll tell you why they've done it this way is because they want to charge you money. Now they brought in prescriptions. Now that I'll be the first to tell you, I'm huge on anti-prescription drugs. But now you've got the whole prescription, and let's look at antidepressants. Let's look at meds. I'm not touching that because that's chemicals. That's chemicals on the brains. Again, we're back to it being a science. But that's psychiatry. Psychology is philosophy. And I'm one of those persons who, I don't want medication. Keep medication as far away from me as you can possibly keep it. And, I'll take some very mild anxiety meds, but for the most part, it's a Band-Aid. And I'm sitting here taking anxiety pills, not addressing my codependency. And it's infuriating. It's infuriating because I have been in professional therapy for X amount of years, and not once did they say, we need to talk about your attachment style. Not once, which is another huge problem with psychology, in my opinion, because their goal is to keep you a patient. So great, you've got my money, you've got the insurance company sitting there funding this crap so you get more money so you can stay in business. In the meantime, I'm not getting better. I'm just a camel being used for whatever you need, so I'm your cash cow. And if I get better, you don't get paid. So they have this dirty motivation to keep you sick. So I'm back to screw this shit, no thank you, and I left the psychology field. I completely abandoned it, and yeah, I have a huge. I walk around giving the psychology field a black eye all the time because of this bullshit. So I'm frustrated. I am very frustrated this morning, and I'm angry because, and this is when I run into with codependency. When I sit down and I start looking at a field and I start pulling it apart, I see so much that basically because some person mandated something as if it were official way back when, it's all hailed as gold and no one questions it. Now, the problem that I have is codependency. Codependency is in the psychology field absolutely going hand in hand with addiction. I don't believe there is anything more fucked up in the field of psychology than codependency and addiction. To the point where you have it wired in your brain going, oh, well, I can't be codependent because my partner isn't an addict. And my partner isn't an addict. So I'm sitting here going, this doesn't make sense. All of my partners, I've never had an addictive partner, but my codependency is there. But if you open any psych book, it will tell you, oh, if you're codependent and there's an addict and it's a relationship and it's symbiotic. No, you dipshits. That's not codependency. So I can't just pull stuff off of the internet because all the internet is saturated with what the psych field is saying, and the psych field is wrong. Every little part of my body is screaming, this doesn't make sense. So now, after my 8-minute dumping on how much I hate the psych field, now we're going to get down to this codependency. Maybe I should pause this. Here's my rant, and now I'm going to talk about codependency because now I have a lot of psych work to do. So I want to know what causes codependency, where exactly it starts. Because when you start doing codependency, and I think I've already pieced it together. What I noticed from one of the things I did find on the internet was codependency, also known as attachment anxious style. And I went, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's throw out the labels. Let's throw out the label of addiction and codependency. What we're really saying, because I understand addiction, this makes sense to me. Addiction is actually avoidant attachment disorder. That's all it is. And I know how to handle avoidant attachment disorder. I know what's going wrong with avoidant attachment. I know the cycle. I know where it comes from. I know why it's cultivated. I haven't looked into anxious attachment. And I think I know. I think I figured it out. So with the avoidant attachment style, basically they are guilt driven. Anxious is fear driven. And my partner is absolutely guilt driven and I am fear driven. Guilt driven is avoidant and fear driven is anxious controller. So the avoidant will basically have the fear, and don't get me wrong, both have fear, both have guilt, but one is dominant, the other is not. So in me, I still have guilt, but my fear is dominant. In my partner, he has fear, but his guilt is dominant. So the guilt is the one that drives his ship, whereas fear is the one that drives mine. So his guilt causes him to avoid, and it puts him in this avoidance cycle, whereas my fear puts me in an anxious style where it causes me to want to control. Now, I believe this has roots in, we're going back to the parents again, and I believe it comes back to narcissism. It comes back to all the shades and colors of parental narcissism and all of its different degrees. And in my environment, one of the resources I said was, oh, this is referenced to when you feel, and this is where I'm going back on my notes. This is where it is a problem with your parenting where it's fear, anger, and shame. Now, shame is guilt. We're going to talk about guilt and shame are on a full spectrum. So fear, anger, and shame. See, anger, this doesn't make sense because yeah, basically it says that fear, anger, or shame were ignored or unacknowledged. And that very much reeks of that narcissistic treatment of I'm going to stonewall you, or I'm going to give you the silent treatment, or I'm going to pretend you don't exist. And it absolutely actually goes hand in hand with a statement that my partner told me about when he was a child. He had this moment where he broke down. I got to think. You know what? I'm not going to tell you about that because that is private. So I'm not going to talk about that. But that being said, there is very much this concept of when I was a child and there was fear and anxiety, whenever I had any kind of a severe emotion, my biggest, most prominent memory in life, ooh, and I can just do some havening, maybe take care of this and immediately get rid of the codependency. But I don't know what kind of damage that will cause. So I really need to get to the root cause first, and then I'll do the havening. So that being said, it's basically whenever I remember being in my room crying and sobbing for hours, wishing somebody would look at me or notice. I felt very invisible. I felt unimportant. I was unimportant. My brother's freedom to beat me was prioritized above my safety and my mental health. And that stuck with me, so that here I am. It's like, no, it's not like, it is a PTSD trigger. All mental illnesses are triggers. So I already have a lot of substantial information already. So this is going to be me pretty much just making notes and building off of what I already know. So all mental illnesses have triggers to them. What the triggers dictate basically what they trigger depends upon what mental illness you have. What mental illness you have depends upon what trauma and what abuse you were subjected to. Yes, midnight, you're gorgeous. Wow. Okay. So that being said, I definitely noticed that there were triggers. It was being invisible. It was feeling ignored. It was feeling unimportant or unloved. No priority on me. And those triggered a feeling of invisibility. And when I felt invisible, when I felt unimportant, then it literally triggered a codependency, and the anxious style kicked in. Now, the cure is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's an old hat for me. That's not going to be a problem. I just need to locate when the trigger happens. So when I do feel invisible, ignored, unimportant, or unprioritized, I just basically have to interrupt and redirect. That is an old hat for me. I can do that, and I can very easily use marijuana. This is how I do it: is when I want to do that, I stack everything. I use the Silva Mind method, I use marijuana, and I use meditation. And I feel the trigger, I immediately intercept it, and then I completely shift it. Now, I have this gorgeous queen side to me. I love my queen side. My queen side is the exact opposite of, that's actually my secure attachment style. So right now, because of my healing, I actually am toggling between secure attachment style and this anxious attachment style. And I will be sitting very comfortably in my secure attachment style. And then my partner will do something, and it could be something simple like not answering a text. And suddenly there's a trigger. Now I feel invisible, and it reminds me back. And here's the thing. All this is I am projecting my parents onto my partner. That's it. I think that's what we all do, is we project our parents onto our partner. And if we address that, you're at the core of mental illness. So I need to talk about what causes the projection, because if we look at the cause of it, that's where we can start unraveling the mental disorder. So what causes the projection onto the partner? And definitely the emotions are the triggers. That I knew, that's old hat for me. So now I have new emotions like invisibility, being ignored, feeling unimportant, no prioritizing. And then I feel those emotions, and then those emotions immediately go over to me feeling invisible and unimportant. And then I seek to cure or resolve those feelings with my handy dandy solution, which is grasping on tighter, which contradicts manifestation, which contradicts Zen Buddhism, which contradicts the vortex. So now I have that coming in, and I can feel me shifting out of the vortex going over to the upstream. And that interferes with my manifestation. It's really sucky when it happens. I'm beginning, I see the big picture now. And then I'm left with this empty, hollow feeling. Empty, hollow feeling, and that significant pain. And that pain goes back to, and we're going back right to the beliefs, because every time you feel emotional pain, it's always, always, always that cognitive core misalignment. It's cognitive dissonance. So what is going inside my cognitive core? That's easy. It's the beliefs. I have misleading beliefs. So now I have to identify the beliefs inside my cognitive core. And the beliefs are, this is easy. No one ever chooses me because my parents didn't. And I don't feel important because I wasn't. So this is really what I'm dealing with. It is a feeling of my parents do not prioritize me, and my parents did not choose me. And now it's I'm not seeing and I'm invisible. So then when my partner goes off and does something, I do make it about me. And this is the part where, how do I change X and push it over? And this is where, and right now it's just all I've got is manifestation and constant practicing and constant cognitive behavioral therapy. No, 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 no. I need to find that little belief inside of my head and snap it out and throw it away, because this is about third party actions, not voices. Third party behavior, because it wasn't anything my parents said to me. It's what my parents did or didn't do to me or for me. That's what I'm up against. We talk a lot about third-party voices. That's the neighborhood eating out of your fridge, and you're going, well, you don't even belong here. But what about the beliefs that are created out of your parents' actions? Wow. How do I get to the bottom of that one? My first thought would be, my partner isn't my parent. This is not the same situation. That's the same practice that we do with PTSD. You are not in the same situation. You are not in the same situation. The other thing is, this is about me not feeling important by my partner, not feeling prioritized by my partner. How the frick do I get to the bottom of this one? The other thing is recognizing when you're in a codependent episode. That's going to be freaking hard because I have to locate all the symptoms. The problem is, my whole life has been revolving around this. These are the symptoms of codependency. And it's funny because anxious attachment style, you've got borderline personality in here. These are all symptoms of narcissism, by the way. Codependency. See, and I didn't even think about this. So codependency, anxious attachment style, and this is all symptoms of narcissism, narcissistic abuse syndrome, and borderline personality disorder. These are all symptoms of narcissism. So how is codependency playing a role in this? And what are the symptoms of codependency? And it has to start with me imagining it's that feeling of insecurity. That's definitely the core of it, but that's a consequence. I feel insecure because, so there is something X, there's X happening that's creating as a consequence to the feeling of insecurity. I know what it is. Use my voice. Use my voice. Let's try it. Use my voice. Because that's something I was not allowed to do. Okay, so Oh, that's it. It's not so much the trigger of the emotion. It's the fact that when I had the emotion, I was gagged and I was powerless. I was mute. That's it. That's it. I got it. I got it. So here's the logic. When you are abused, your voice and your name are taken away from you. I'm going to cry, and it's okay if I cry because this is big. Your name and your voice are taken away from you. I talk about this in what's happening when you're being abused. Your name and your voice is taken away from you. Now, it can be taken away from you under many things. It can be ignored. That's the silent treatment. This is very emotional shit. You could be abused where your parents beat you. You could be threatened where they say, if you tell someone my secret, I'm going to kill someone. If you tell someone my secret, then this is going to be the consequence. So you could be threatened, you could be physically beaten or physically raped, or you could just be ignored. Ignoring that silent treatment takes away your name, actually all of it. The threats makes you afraid to use your name or your voice. The physical abuse makes you afraid to use your name or your voice. But ignoring makes you feel like your name and your voice have no strength, no authority. That's really what this is about, is authority. I do a lot of work about the psychology of authority. It's a completely different feeling. I had all three of them done to me by different abusers. So I got the triple threat of I was ignored and I was threatened and I was abused. And I was physically abused, physically beaten, physically raped. And then I was also physically, I got to watch others suffer if I didn't obey. So I literally, this is what I mean by I had all the trauma. But the ignoring is what voice you did have was invalidated. It's the invalidation again. Now, the real trigger is not the emotions. That's what we think. That's what psychologists tell us. It's wrong. The real trigger is not the situation. That is actually, you've already been triggered by the time you get to emotions in the situation. The real trigger is the feeling, the lack of power. It's feeling powerless. That is really the trigger. Dun, dun, dun. This is the core of codependency. Got it. All right. 22 minutes. That's a record for me unwrapping this shit. Oh, yeah. And here I was thinking it was going to take me a lot longer. You're going to get to see over the next 2 weeks how I practiced this and how I turned on my codependency in my anxious attachment style. Because what I need to do now, this is the beautiful part. Because my issue is not being ignored, being threatened, being abused. Because it's not what are the emotions, what's the situation. It's feeling powerless. It's having no authority. So the two things, we're back to the cognitive core. You have your ethics, you have your beliefs, you have your behavior, and you have your voice. And you have all those things like line up and make your perspective. It's what they do to your voice. They take away your authority. Your authority is your behavior and your voice. It's your ability in your own power to stand up and defend your own system. That is really where the trauma lies. You think you're powerless. This is about you thinking that you don't have the authority. The authority's been taken away from you. It's been taken by your abuser. And that's really what you've lost. So in the situation that I'm in right now, I feel powerless. I feel out of control. And I realized I need to use my voice. And that's the conditioning. I have been practicing not using my voice for 40 years. So the spell, the literally the solution to break this spell is to use your voice. So I just texted my partner and said, I miss you. I would like to see you again. Are you comfortable with that? Now, I have asserted myself. I have completely changed the situation. I'm no longer helpless. I am no longer at the mercy of my silence. I have taken back the authority, the power, and the control. And now I don't feel codependent anymore because I'm speaking, because I am enforcing. And with that comes secure attachment style. So the cure to your attachment style is actually using your voice and acting using your behavior to actually take back the authority, the power, and the control. Booyah, there it is. Did it in 25 minutes. I am so proud of me. I thought this was going to be like, all right, let's see what we can do. So this is my theory. Now I get to use myself, patient zero, as research. I get to implement it, see where my flaws are, tweak it a little bit. But I'm going to make a point now of basically using my voice to show myself that my voice has power. I'm going to learn how powerful my voice is, how powerful my authority is when I speak my truth, when I am no longer invisible because I've spoken. It is such a powerful thing. There's another element there. There is one more element. I'm missing it and I can feel it. Oh, I love that intuition. I love doing psychology with intuition. The universe just screamed at me and said, "You're missing one more point. There's one more element you're missing. Yes, you've got your action and your behavior. Yes, you have your voice, but there's one more thing. There is one more thing. So we're going to call that X. Well, I figure it out because there is more thing, but this is the foundation. So it's going to be your action and your behavior. This is it. This is about you taking back your power. This is about you taking back your control. This is about you getting a secure attachment style. Now, this is the fun part. After this, I'm going to sit down and actually listen to the book Attached, which is like one of the leading books in attachment styles. I have yet to actually read it. I don't like doing research because like actual research because I have this intuition, this cognizance, this clairvoyance, claircognizance of being able to feel what's right in psychology and feeling what's right when it comes to the energy. And every time I study, that intuition gets louder where it just goes, that's not correct. That's off. That's off. So I like to do my own work, my own theory. And then I like to sit down and compare those to what the psychologists say. And then I can see where it all comes together. But yes, same thing with addiction. This is it. Addiction is just the polar opposite of codependency. It's the same fucking spectrum. I see it now. So you're either on the addiction side, and that's why they keep confusing it, or you're on the codependency side. But either way, at the end of the day, you are still no. My intuition does not like that. They just said, no, you are wrong. Addiction is something else. And there is, oh, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. I see there's something, this is me trying to figure it out. It's a spectrum. And there's addiction is one extreme and this other side of it, the black and white is something else. It's X. I don't know what that is. But same thing with codependency. So codependency and addiction actually aren't on the same field. It's something different. I'm still trying to figure that out. So that's something I got to figure out is what are those undefineds? But in the meantime, this is about authority. This is absolutely my relationship with authority because when we're children, we don't have authority. It's the very first thing that's when we are born into the world, we are born with authority and we are born with our identity. Oh, this is it. This feels good. This feels right. And our parents take away our authority because we're infants, or we're toddlers. You don't want a 2-year-old with tantrum problems running around with authority. Like, oh my God, because authority comes with power and responsibility. You hear me? These are powerful words. These are amazing words. Okay. So you have authority, and then on the other side, you have power and you have responsibility. Okay. And then you have your identity. Now, when you're abused, not only is your authority taken away, so is your identity. Allah, oh my God, yes, your identity and your authority are taken away. So when you're abused, and I didn't even think about authority. I haven't even touched anything. Like it's been toggling in the back of my mind going, oh, this is about authority. I really need to do a piece on authority. But now that I'm sitting here actually doing this work and I'm looking at it, I'm going, oh, that's the piece. That's the piece. That's the piece. Yes, I understand. Authority. Okay, so it's what I'm hearing is It's when you're abused, your name is taken away. There it is. There it is. Your name is taken away. Your identity is taken away. Your voice is taken away. And your authority is taken away. That's the third. That was the missing X. There we go. So that's that third piece is it's your authority, it's your name, and it's your voice. Those three things are taken away from you. And the name tells you, I am here. I am somebody. I am important. The voice says, this is my power. This is my space. And the authority is the application of these two things where you make space for yourself on the outside. This is huge because when we're abused, we shrink. And what we're really doing is surrendering our authority and we're closing in because we're giving up our space. We have internal space and we have external space. And the external space is your authority, it's your power. And this is what I learned living with a narcissist for the last year was he took hit the external space. So whenever I stepped outside of my bedroom in my own home for the last year, I felt like I had no right to take up space. I couldn't even use the bathroom. I couldn't shower. I couldn't cook because I wasn't allowed to take up space outside of my bedroom. This is the exact same situation that I grew up in. Exact same situation I grew up in. I was not allowed to take up physical space on the outside, external space. That belonged to the narcissist. And it was imperative, according to the narcissist, that I obey their laws and their rules. So as a result, I learned how to shrink. I learned how to close off. And I learned how to contain. This is very much a containing, closed off, bridged and inaccessible. Yeah, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And and I can feel it every time I'm around a narcissist, I feel it being triggered. No matter how much mental work I've done, you get me around a narcissist and I immediately go back to this. And I hated it. I noticed that. And I was like, God damn it. Here I am, this powerful, amazing queen of a goddess. And I get around a fucking narcissist. And the first thing I do is just go like this all over again. And I hated myself for that. I'm like, why am I doing this? So I'm sitting here now looking at all of this going, this is about me taking back my authority. So when we are looking at codependency and anxious attachment styles, there's a lot of focus on, nurture yourself. That's a consequence. Nurturing yourself and building up confidence and its self-esteem is a consequence to utilizing your authority. So for me, I texted my partner and said, these are my feelings. This is what I want. This is what I'm ready for. Now, he might not be ready for it, but I can still voice and express. This is self-expression. Ooh, that's big. I have never looked into self-expression before. Holy fucking shit. That's going to be so much fun to just dig at. This is going to be like all of next week. This is all I'm going to be doing is research on self-expression and authority. It's time I dig into this because this is a problem I have. And it's that mousy, insignificant, small feeling of don't take up any external space. That's what codependency feels like. It's that, oh, I've been conditioned to serve. I need to make sure that I have the responsibility of taking care of the subject. And here's the thing. I wrote this graph up and I got to share this graph with you. I don't know how this is going to come up. But I looked at anxious attachment styles. And let me see if I can show you this. So I don't know if you can see this. So you have an anxious person with an anxious. You have an anxious person who's single, the self. And you have an anxious person with an avoidant. You also have an avoidant person with an avoidant. You have an avoidant person who's single with themselves. And you have an avoidant person with the avoidant. Now, when you have an avoidant person with an avoidant, when you have an avoidant person with an anxious, you end up with a codependency. You end up with the chase, the pursue, the control, and there's the imbalance of power. Power again, authority, the imbalance of authority. With the avoidant to the self, they run the risk of going into a hermitage and becoming too comfortable. Oh, I can see the spectrum already. That's where they're too comfortable. They get into their comfort zone and then they never come out. And when you have an avoidant with an avoidant, the avoidants actually nurture each other's avoidant, and that hermitage actually is worse than if they were alone and isolated. It's as toxic because it just keeps nurturing. This is a very, very toxic nurturing that isolation because it enables the isolation. Unfortunately, when you get the avoidant with the anxious, it becomes that chaser and it becomes imbalanced. So your option is imbalanced in one way, completely imbalanced in the other way. And what you want is this gorgeous balance, this polar balance. And in order to get the polar balance, the avoidant needs to step up and act like an anxious, and the anxious needs to step back and act like an avoidant. You literally need to flip the authority roles. That's really what this is about, is the authority roles. Oh, that's genius. I'm going to write that down. Authority roles. Oh, I just unlocked this massive, like, boom, umbrella thing with psychology. It's authority roles. And it falls into codependency addiction. It falls into narcissist and empath. It falls into anxious and avoidant. This is it. It is literally the role of authority that we are talking about here. This is the encompassment prerequisite of all mental illness. This is where it starts. What are your authority roles? And is there a balance of your authority roles? Now, the other side of all this is the anxious being paired up with the anxious. Now, what's going to end up happening is you have two of you cleaning together to the point where you're both suffocating each other. I had this with my second marriage. I actually had it with my first marriage also. The next one is anxious with the self. Now, anxious with the self is this massive pull to, oh, I got to go find somebody. I got to go find somebody. I got to go find somebody. And then the next one is the anxious with the avoider. The anxious with the avoider is no different than the avoider with the anxious, where you have, again, the authority roles are out of balance. So there is no right way here. This is all wrong. This is all toxic. This is all unhealthy. This is all a result of a conflict of authority roles when we were children, because we are projecting the way our parents parented us onto our partners. So the question is, how do you resolve it? Well, that's easy. You resolve it by taking away the one thing that's been compromised, your authority to utilize your behavior and your voice to enforce. Ooh, is a good word. You need to enforce your authority. You need to use it, apply your authority. Now, the avoidant, they're going to have two different things. With the avoidant and with the anxious, both of you, when you're given the opportunity to, and authority is not control. That's the delusion. Authority is not the same thing as control. That's where the anxious thinks, that's where the narcissist thinks, oh, authority means control. No, authority does not mean control. Not equal control. And that's the confusion. Now, avoidance, they don't want control. They don't want the authority. They don't want the responsibility. They go, responsibility is icky. That's what the avoidant does. The anxious goes, yeah, I want the control. I want the authority. That way I'll be in charge. That way I can feel safe. There it is. The avoidant fears the control and the responsibility. The anxious desires the control and the responsibility. That's the balance. This is so like, oh, it feels so good to get all of this out. Like, this is me analyzing what's wrong with me, why I have these problems. And this makes so much sense. And so when you get an anxious and an avoidant together, the avoidant goes, I don't want responsibility. And the anxious says, hey, that's okay. I'll take all the responsibility. No, because now they have enabled my addiction to authority, and I have enabled their aversion to authority. So to do this, he needs to take authority. The avoidant needs to take authority and step up and assume some of that responsibility. And I need to release the responsibility and relax. And that, boom, will switch the tide. So the thing that's missing here, the element that's really missing, is not the control, not the responsibility, but the power to speak up and utilize the voice saying, this is what I want. And that's what we were not taught, both anxious and avoidant. We were not taught to use our voices. We were taught to do instead, or to ignore, or to pull away. So to completely reverse this, the only solution is to, this is my name. This is my name. And this is what I desire. And this is what I am ready for. And I'm asking you, are you ready for it? Now, he can say no. And I already feel better because I have released the suppression that I was putting inside of myself. And it's the suppression, it's that closing off, it's that I'm going to gag my own throat. Now, I have been conditioned, every one of us, anxious and avoider, has been conditioned to silence the voice. Good God, this is really fucking important because you have to get used to using your voice. So, this is a lot. This is me like cramming a full. This is me researching. This is how I do this shit. So, I needed to go do some self-care. And it's going to be like, I just did my first experiment with this. I used my voice, I expressed myself, and he's an avoidant. So he's probably not going to answer my text. He's probably going to ignore my text. And because he's an avoidant. And I know exactly how to handle that. That's going to be in 3 days because he's at an event. I need to very gently broach the subject. Basically, I have to give him a psychologically safe place because he does not feel psychologically safe right now. So I have to make sure that this is handled very gently. Just show him it's okay. You don't have to. This is an alternative. Now, this is what I want to show you. This is the genius of what I just realized today. This is the beautiful part. This is the healthy road where you enter a dialogue and you exchange and you talk. And it's okay if he doesn't agree with me. But in the cycle, in the anxious avoidance cycle, there's this pull and push of I want no responsibility. So it's all black and white and extreme. And we have fallen into that habit. But when you step out of that stream and you step over into the, okay, we're not going to do the avoidant, anxious cycle. I don't want to do that loop anymore. I'm sick of that loop. I want to try this. And this is going to be me communicating my feelings, my wants, my desires, what I'm ready for. And then respecting whatever space that you are in. And that's it. It's respecting the space. But it's prioritizing his psychological safety over me getting what I want. That's back to the anxious attachment. That's the controller. That's the, I'm going to take the authority because it was taken from me. This is a lot to unpack. I'm at 42 minutes. So I'm going to wrap it down here. And like I said, this is going to be like now we're going to unpackage this. Now we're going to really start digging into it. And this is what I love about it is I can already see this. What is it called? What did I call this? I got to go back over my notes. It's funny because I write all these notes and then I never again look at them. I have authority roles. This is 1000% authority roles. This is the umbrella. So like I create these while I scribble my notes and then I have buckets of them. I have literally bins of paperwork since I was 15 years old. Since 1995, I kept everything. Mind you, this was before the internet, and this was before like all I had was papers. So it's authority roles. Yeah, and I kept everything. I kept all of my documentation. So you have your authority roles, and under your authority roles, you fall into the category of anxious or avoidant. And this is really a focus on your relationship with responsibility. The anxious says yes to responsibility. And the avoidant says hell no to responsibility. And there's also this massive, and this is where the imbalance comes from. And when you get imbalanced, you get a symbiotic enabling, a co-enabling. There we go. That's what it is. Because, and this is the other thing, is the addict is also enabling the codependent. Codependent is also enabling the addict. It's a symbiotic relationship. So throw out the term addiction because there doesn't have to be an addiction here. Throw out the codependent because that's just a term linked 100% with the avoidant. And then they start talking about the 12 steps. And I'm sorry, fuck the 12 steps. No. If something works, there's never a relapse. If it works, there is never a relapse. If there's a relapse, it never worked to begin with. It was a Band-Aid. Fuck the 12 steps. Sorry. But that is a huge gaslighting bullshit term. Is this thing is there. It doesn't work. Everyone claims it works. But if you look at the statistics, how many people suffer from a relapse? If it worked, there'd be no relapse. It's not working. So, that all being said, you have the symbiotic relationship. God, I feel so fantastic right now. I feel like, yes, this makes sense. So, you have a symbiotic relationship where both are enabling each other. And in order to break this, you basically, the avoidant has to say yes to responsibility, and the anxious has to say, I'm going to release the responsibility. And then it's a matter of taking the responsibility. The bird is back. All right. So I have a fun situation. I literally have birds in my house right now, starlings. So I have to go let a bird outside. So I will be right back. Well, no, I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for joining me. My link is in the bio. My daughter's dancing. Thank you so much for joining me, and may the kindest words always find you. My God, this is a stupid fucking